Hi, I'm Mike Ignatowski, the creator of the PurpleWolf basketball spreadsheet, the spreadsheet that aims to help you get more enjoyment out of your tabletop basketball projects by doing a lot of the work, if not all the work, of tracking your team and players' game stats and season stats, as well as team standings and schedules. By doing that, you'll get more time to play your games, have more fun, and maybe take on projects that you wouldn't otherwise take on. This is video number 1 in a 4-part video series where I give a relatively detailed overview of the PurpleWolf basketball spreadsheet. In this first video, I'm going to cover general info and the basic features of the Scoresheet. So let's get into PurpleWolf and see what it's all about. We'll answer these questions, or try to, which is, what is PurpleWolf? What does it do? How does it do it? And why use it? What it is it's an Excel spreadsheet that I've programmed to assist the tabletop basketball gamer community, mainly targeted at the cards and dice players. And it is a spreadsheet that contains a configurable basketball score sheet. It automatically computes game stats as you record the events in your game, and it'll also track the cumulative and season stats for all the players and teams in your project. And it has a very flexible league framework to handle lots of different kinds of projects, whether they be historical or custom. We'll see more about that later. It's not specific toward any tabletop basketball game, but pretty much any game that can record or generate individual player events. This isn't made to just record the score of a game, but it wants to get down to the details of the individual player stats. It does run on a Mac and a PC. That's one of the nice features of having it in Excel. Expertise in Excel is not required, but it never hurts. It does require a full version of Excel. It won't work on Google Sheets because it's not just a spreadsheet. And you'll be able to tell that as we see some of the screenshots. And it won't work on OpenOffice. And it doesn't work, I don't believe it works on a tablet version of Excel. You need the full version of it. A few fun facts. It was initially released in January 2026. I'm actively supporting and developing it. I definitely plan to put out some more updates as with some new features. The place to get PurpleWolf is from the PurpleWolf Facebook group. And that's really the only place that I publish the spreadsheet. It's not that I'm a Facebook slappy or anything, but it's just a convenient way to give the public access to this program. So you don't have to do anything else on Facebook if you don't want to, but you have to be on Facebook or have a friend on Facebook to get the spreadsheet. And it also provides a convenient kind of a community framework there to ask questions and interact with other PurpleWolf spreadsheet users. I've created some videos on YouTube of how the different parts of PurpleWolf work, and I'll continue to generate more of those videos as I release new updates. The PurpleWolf spreadsheet is the third sports spreadsheet that I've programmed. And so I consider it the child of Blue Links, the hockey spreadsheet. And then that makes it the grandchild of Green Fox, which was the baseball spreadsheet that I first created. And the advantage of that is just that I've learned a lot in creating those and releasing the many updates to each of those. They're both still being updated, but the good thing for PurpleWolf is that PurpleWolf kind of can start out with some features that were not in those other ones when they first were released. So it kind of starts off farther along than the other two. If you care about programming, it's written in Microsoft Visual Basic for applications, or VBA, which isn't the greatest of programming languages, but it works, and it works great for developing things in Microsoft's suite of Office programs, and that's why I chose to do it this way. It's got a lot of code. It takes a lot of time, but I enjoy doing it. One thing I will say is that it's not made to solve every tabletop basketball gaming problem. So here I'm just kind of reiterating, I guess, the target problem it's made to solve, which is if you have a project that includes teams, a schedule, you're keeping track of your standings, you're tracking player and team and season stats and game stats, all that kind of together to me is like tracking a league. It doesn't mean it's an official league. It could be your own fictitious league, or teams you put together to kind of make your own league. But either way, I consider those all kind of league structures. It's really not designed to just handle a one-off basketball game between whoever you want to play. It's otherwise you could create a league and put those two teams in it and play them. But if you're just going to play them once, I don't think it's worth using PurpleWolf to do it. Although you could if you wanted to. But so it's more for longer projects where you want to track, I'll say, season or cumulative stats. And I think that's the reason I created it. And I'm not trying to exclude anybody, but hopefully it'll be a good reason to try some projects that you haven't tried before, because now the burden of the stats and the convenience of it, isn't as bad as it was. This will make it easy, give you more time to play, and you can get your project done faster, and it won't be so much stat tracking drudgery. So let's get more into back to PurpleWolf and what it is and how it works. The main components, which are very similar to the other two spreadsheets, they both have, you set up a league, you have a score sheet to enter the game results, and then you have parts of the spreadsheet to maintain or operate your league. And that's kind of similar to, I would say, in a way, all sports. So at least these team sports. So it lists specific here what stats are here that it tracks: league leaders, player and team game logs, and then the season totals for players and teams. And it does have an optional injury chart if you want to use it, but it's not required. So now we're going to get into kind of each of these components in more details, mostly with screenshots. I'm hoping to have a couple of video snippets to show some things, but it'll mostly be screenshots to kind of go over how the spreadsheet can deal with each of these parts of your league and your project. All right, let's get into the spreadsheet itself here. So the first thing I want to mention is, because PurpleWolf is an Excel spreadsheet, it takes advantage of an Excel feature of having multiple worksheets within the Excel workbook. So if an Excel file is called a workbook, it can have a lot of different pages, if you can think about them as pages, but they call them worksheets. And that's convenient because you can store different kinds of information on each sheet. So, and PurpleWolf definitely takes advantage of that. And the word worksheet in the Excel term is basically synonymous. It means the same thing as a tab or a sheet. So you'll hear me probably say all three of these words in these videos, about whether it's a worksheet, a sheet, or a tab, but they all mean the same thing. And that's these down at the bottom of an Excel spreadsheet. These are the tabs, or these are the sheets, or the worksheets. What do you want to call them? But you can see there's quite a few. I don't know how many there are, but probably 20 or so. And that helps PurpleWolf to organize all the different pieces of data for your project. And they're color coded kind of in groups. That's what I kind of wanted to mention here. Is so to get around the spreadsheet, you want to go at different times, be on different tabs or different sheets. And to do that, to help make it easier, you don't have to use this, but I created this little navigator form here, which is a little pop-up window, and you can launch it by clicking this PurpleWolf Navigator button here on the score sheet. When you do, this little window pops up, and you can see it itself has 6 tabs up here, just like a file folder. And when you click it, each one of these, they each have their own color-coded group of buttons below them. And these buttons correspond to the tab. So when you click the main tab here, you'll get this set of yellow buttons, and these score sheet schedule standings correspond to these yellow tabs down here. So the words don't match up exactly because it's a little more plain English on the navigator. Some of the tabs that I have, the names are abbreviated, a little cryptic, but so this is just a different way to get around from sheet to sheet within the PurpleWolf spreadsheet. Again, this navigator is optional. At times it's convenient, but you don't have to use it. But I just want to mention that at the get-go. Okay, so the score sheet. This picture of a score sheet of a completed game, kind of. It's a simulated game, so the stats, the numbers are kind of normal, but they're not exactly normal because you can kind of see here, like every player is playing in every quarter, which is surely unrealistic. But let's not really worry about that. The point is that it just, let's see how it looks. But on the, I kind of have maybe 4 pieces of the score sheet, and this is, there's one piece not shown, but this first piece here I'll call is the score book, because it looks like a typical basketball score book, and it has the the rosters, and it has each of the quarters and areas where you write down basically their stats for each quarter. Over here on the right are their game totals, both for the players and the teams. And in PurpleWolf, as these events are recorded here, these totals are updated instantaneously. Another little piece of the score sheet are these buttons around the edge, and they're pretty self-explanatory, but they do different things. But I'm not going to get too much into those in this video. But that's what those are. And below this that you can't see right now are the event log tables, but we'll see them later in this video. This is just zooming in on one team and one quarter of the score sheet. So you can see this is the 74 San Antonio ABA Spurs, but this is just kind of showing these codes. And the score sheet game events are recorded in PurpleWolf using 24 different characters or codes. Each code is 1 character. There are no 2-character codes. So you can see here are all the codes, and this window here is available. When you click this question mark, it shows this window here, which is the score sheet event code key. And that just tells you what all the different letters and numbers and symbols mean. But, you can see here they're kind of grouped by color. Like 1, 2s, and 3s, those are the scoring events. UDT, those are all basically missed shots, kind of following uno, dos, tres, or whatever different. Many languages have these are the letters that start 1, 2, and 3. But English isn't one of them, but that's why they're chosen. And different other ones, rebounds, fouls. Over here, these ones are optional, these point scoring categories, if you want to keep track of second chance points or fast break points or points in the paint, if that's even an option in your game, you can. And there's a special one for an injury. But so anyway, so these symbols get written in here as the game progresses. And for each quarter, you can also see that there's a total team points scored in the quarter. It's here, and team fouls. And this team foul is color coded, which can indicate a bonus situation. But we'll talk more about that later too. So how do those codes get here? You don't have to enter them. So, but I wanted to show you that as kind of step one. But this colorful and busy slide is showing you this pop-up, this form called the event logger, and that does basically all the work. As I head over here in the margin, this is really the only form you need to interact with to record a game, pretty much, other than change the quarter. And I hope that it will become, within the PurpleWolf spreadsheet, as I wrote, I hope this will be your best friend, because this is really what you're going to interact with to do most of your work, at least when you're scoring a game. So let's look at what the different parts are. You can see here first, it has both teams, and it lists the 5 guys that are currently on the court or in the game, or however you want to call that. In addition, it has the team below it, like a team and a bench, and that's there to assign either team or bench fouls or tech fouls or team rebounds or maybe 24-second violation, team turnovers. That's what that team or bench player is for. Here are the starters, or the guys in the game. There's this button here for the substitution form. We'll look at that later. There's this area here for assigning minutes played. This big box in the middle is kind of the main thing here. The main smorgasbord of options, which is the event box, and that's where you pick what event you're recording for your game. This green button up here is how you save that or log the event to the score sheet. This column here, these gray boxes, used to assign players to add-on events. And we'll jump down here. These 2 boxes at the bottom of the event box are these add-on event 1 and add-on event 2. So this is where you can kind of either think of it as daisy chaining or connecting one event with another that logically fits. So as an example, as I said here, if you click a missed field goal, then who got the rebound, that would be an add-on event. So-and-so missed a shot, and one of these would be like for defensive rebound, one's for offensive rebound. Similarly, if somebody makes a shot, who got the assist, that could be an add-on event. And up here, again, is this optional point category. So if you pick something that results in points, like this 2-point field goal here, then these would be enabled, and you could say whether it was a second chance point, a fast break point, points in the paint. It could be, I'm not sure if it could be all these points at once, but anyway, you can pick multiple of these. It could be a fast break and points in the paint. So that's all the things in this event logger. Again, this is really where all the work or magic happens. And in general, right, you start with, you pick a player, and then that'll pick the player. You can't pick more than one player. So if you pick here and you pick somebody else, it'll automatically only select the last person you clicked. Just like these events. All these circles mean they're kind of mutually exclusive within their area. So within this box, you can only pick one of these events. So this here is the old-fashioned and one. So they made a two-pointer and got fouled. So once you click this button, the add-on event becomes who's the opponent that fouled them. These are free throws. If you can make one or miss one. These down here mean they made one and missed one. And similarly, made two and missed one. So let's take a closer look maybe of an example of that. So here's an event logger example of Bill Laimbeer. I selected him, so you see how it turns a different color here. So this shows that Bill Laimbeer is selected. Then I picked a 2-point field goal. So that's selected. And then this, you can see now it says assist down here on add-on event 1. So then I clicked Isaiah Thomas's add-on position column here. And that puts his name down here and got the assist. And then because he was down in the paint, I clicked this points in the paint box. So then, and I kind of wrote that over here. Then when I would click this green button, it would log or save that 2 places. One is to the event log, which we'll look at in a second, and to the score sheet, and that's where it'll apply all the applicable codes. So it would put a 2 next to Bill Laimbeer because he made a 2-point shot, and an A next to Isaiah Thomas for an assist. It would also put a symbol by Bill Laimbeer that would indicate that was 2 points in the paint. So you can see here, there's the pieces on the left of, you have the primary player, the primary event, then the add-on event, if there is one, and who did it, and then if there's any point category. So that's an example of how the event logger works. That I can't say it enough, but this is basically the engine of the entire spreadsheet. So here are the Scoresheet event logs. So again, this part is below the scorebook part of the scoresheet. You can kind of see the bottom of the scorebook here. And every time you click that green button, this green button here, again, it writes it to this log, whatever period it's in, it'll write it in here and also update the score sheet. So if you make a mistake, like let's say you either forgot to put something on an event or you gave it to the wrong player, right now there's no edit. But all you can do is go and delete it and re-enter it. But if you're not sure what you did, you can click on any of these events at any time, and it'll bring up a little message box that will present the details, and I'll call, plain English. So there's this one. You can kind of figure it out here. This first column is always the team and the primary player, and then the rest of the info. So this is, the first quarter, Oakland, Rick Barry made a 3-point field goal, and Larry Brown got the assist. You can kind of see that here of this 3, and then this is kind of add-on event player 1. Then it'll ask you if you want to delete this. And you can, if you say yes, I think it'll ask you one more time to confirm. But if you do, then you have to just re-record it if you want to. Or you just say no if you just want to look at it. So that's the event log. And there's one for each quarter, each period. And so that's kind of how you could, if you wanted to go back and look at something, you could also look here what order you did it in, if you care. Another part of the event logger is this player substitution. It handles the subs. So when you click this button, a substitution form window comes up. So in this example, this is for the Spurs. You can see here it shows who are the 5 people on the court, who's currently on the bench, and you use these arrows to move players from the court to the bench, or from the bench onto the court or into the game, however you want to do it. As soon as you move somebody, there'll be a box here that says changes detected. And then when you've got your changes set, you click this green button and it will apply the changes, as this thing says, to both the score book, Scoresheet. You can see here when it does that, it color codes who are the 5 in the game right now. So it'll update them as you go. And it'll update them here on the event logger form. And then after you're done with one team, you can just click this button here, which will be the other team's kind of team ID. So you click this and you could easily switch. Then it would show, like here, the Utah Stars, and list their guys, and you could make those player substitutions. I think it's common that you do them at the same time, from what I've learned about these tabletop basketball games. Okay, this next one we've got is the Scoresheet team and player stats. We're back on the Scoresheet now. And you can see that these are updated real time as you go, but I just kind of wanted to focus here on all the different stats. So this is kind of just showing what all is possible. And here it shows them all. But again, there's a button here, but you don't have to show them all if you don't want to. So if you want, there's another sheet here called the config sheet. And that's where you can basically hide some of the stat categories that you don't want to see on your score sheet because you're not, either don't want to use them or just don't want to see them. And this, if you've used the Blue Links hockey, it should look very familiar. But so here you could see the various stat categories, and these ones with the green, they're not configurable. They're always visible on the score sheet. And they're kind of like, rebounds, assists, stuff like that, points. You have to show that stuff. Some other ones are optional, like these point scoring categories, or maybe your game doesn't have flagrant fouls or whatever. You can turn some things off. So you make your changes, and then you can click this button up here. There's also some other settings down below this that we'll get to in a second, but that's how you can configure what columns you want to see. But as it says up here, it doesn't matter. Whatever you pick you want to see, and you can change it during the game. It doesn't matter, because independent of what's visible, the score sheet will always save all the data for all the columns all the time. So it's really just a matter of display, not what's actually saved by the spreadsheet. Minutes played. Let's talk about that for a second. I guess the first thing to say is it's optional whether you want to track minutes played or not. I don't know what's more common, to do it or not do it, but if you want to do it, here's how this works. So within the event logger, we mentioned there's in the lower left, that's where you can conveniently assign minutes played to players, and you can do it two ways. If you have this all players button checked, it'll assign this many minutes, and you can configure it with these buttons, this many minutes to all players in the game on both teams. So 10 players, it'll assign however many minutes for whatever period you're in. Or you could, if you need to do something specific, you can just pick a single player. This really should say selected player, not players, because you only can pick one, and then modify their minutes. And if you can actually make this negative if you want to subtract minutes if you applied some accidentally. Then this button below here, the show hide minutes played in the score sheet, that's what shows or hides these period columns. A lot of times, maybe you do, maybe you don't. But if you don't want to see these extra columns all the time, you could have them hidden until you want to see them. Then you could show these. but these are just minutes played in each quarter. This MPG here, this is the average minutes played per game, minutes per game, as computed by the Basketball Reference website. So that's where I get that from. And that's kind of built into the spreadsheet. Whereas this is how much they've actually played in your current game. And then down at the bottom, it'll keep track of your totals. And another thing with minutes played is there's some game options that you can configure to say whether you want to track minutes played or not. But if you do, then when you switch periods, like when I go to the second quarter, before it would let me switch, it would look at these minutes, and if I'm playing if my spreadsheet set up for 12 minutes a quarter, then I need to have 60 minutes down here for both teams. And if I don't, it'll tell me that, and I'll need to fix that. So that's some validation it has as far as tracking minutes played, if you want to use that. Another feature of the Scoresheet is it has a box score that at the end of the game you can print this box score. I try to make this look kind of like a classic box score out of a newspaper. It's going to be a convenient way if you want to post something online about a special game you had. But that's that. Overtime. PurpleWolf is set up to accommodate up to 5 overtimes. Hopefully that's adequate. So that means there's these hidden columns in both the scoreboard and down here on the score sheet for recording players' stats. So that's kind of like extra innings in baseball and overtime in hockey. It's the same concept. Another little feature on the score sheet is this, what I call the stat stuffer handling feature. So if you have a lot going on for one player in one period, it'll auto expand to handle 2 rows worth of event data. But right now that's the max. So I guess it's possible, if you've got somebody scoring a lot, getting a lot of rebounds, and especially if you're tracking maybe the point category, that you could take advantage of this feature. So that is Stat Stuffer. Some other customizations, and these are also on the config sheet that we saw where you picked your like what stat columns you want to show. That's where these come into play. These are pretty much just all, how do you want to configure your score sheet? This first one is just what color do you want to use to show who's in the game. This is how many bench players you want to allow basically on the bench during a game. It's kind of like your game time roster. How many should you allow? I think the max the spreadsheet can handle is up to 15. So that would be 10 on your bench. I think the NBA, I'm not sure what the NBA official rule is, but most of the time it's 7 or 8 they'll have as far as dressed players on the bench. Anyway, but these are configurable within a range. Similarly, we've got minutes per period. In the NBA, this is 12 minutes per overtime period. This is just kind of what the default number of minutes is for that in the event logger when you assign your minutes. Over here, these are all about fouls. This is how many fouls in a period to get to the bonus. How many fouls you need for team fouls in an overtime period to reach the bonus. And this has to do with personal fouls, of how many before somebody's considered in, quote, foul trouble. And what that means is when somebody gets to this foul trouble number, it'll give you a little message so you can acknowledge it, as well as it'll change the color of personal fouls on the score sheet to indicate somebody's in, quote, foul trouble. And then this last one is how many fouls to foul out of the game. So that's what that is. Like its predecessors, the Blue Lynx and Green Fox, it has this game options sheet, which has various things you can set for how it behaves. But one thing I'll mention first, and that's number 3, is it doesn't have any hover stats for yet, but I hope in the next release it will. Which means when you hover on their name in the score sheet, it'll show some season stats. But these next 3 here, 4, 5, and 6, has to do with minutes played. If you want to validate minutes played, this could probably just also say just track minutes played. It's effectively the same thing. So if that's what I was talking about, where if you have that on, then it'll check your minutes when you switch periods and stuff. If this is off, it doesn't care what you put in there for minutes. But I would say if you're going to record them, you should use this. And this are just some other things that go along with the minutes played of, kind of confirming it before you assign them. And then whether you want to have an alert when a player reaches or exceeds his average minutes per game, do you want it to tell you about it? These numbers 7 and 8, as it says over here, for statistical accuracy, if they're applicable to your game. So these have to do with, kind of, I guess, also add-on events in the event logger of if you record a blocked shot. The question here is, do you want the event logger to force you to say whose shot got blocked, basically who missed the field goal? And similarly, if you have a steal, do you want to record who turned the ball over, who got the ball stolen from them? So those are that. These are some other ones about foul trouble and fouling out. This last one I'll mention because it's, I think, important. This is when you save the results of a game, that it'll prompt you to save your spreadsheet, because I think it can be a little bit confusing. When you save your game stats, it'll say, okay, game stats have been saved, but that really only means it saved it to the Excel sheets or tabs. But that is not the same as saving your PurpleWolf spreadsheet to your hard disk to kind of save it so that when you open it the next time, it's all there. So I added this option just to kind of, I think it's a good idea after each game that you can save your results and stats from a game, that you should save your spreadsheet also. So that's what that's about. Like the other spreadsheets, you can customize some team colors. If you go to your league sheet here, this is on the league sheet, this column here's where you set your team colors. You basically are just setting a background color and a text color for your teams. You can change these at any time you want. They don't affect any stats, obviously, but they make your score sheet look cool if your colors look good. Just make sure you can read them. So this just kind of shows where they show up in different places. But that's that. I think that's the end of what I'm going to talk about with the score sheet. Now I can show a little video of this, see it live and see how that works. That wraps up video number 1 in this 4-part series. I encourage you to watch the next video number 2, where I'll give a live demo of the score sheet, and I will also cover the many stats that the PurpleWolf spreadsheet tracks.